So, how are we doing? How are you?
I'm good.
Did you have a look at the budget when did you think, as somebody who is not that keen on seeing the Conservatives re-elected, did you watch and think...
You're so polite. I wish I could say it in my way.
You watched and you thought, that's torn it, they're now going to win the election.
No, I think, well, it's a clever budget, I'll grant them that, because it's full of bribes, and I mean, the national insurance change is good, but don't forget that in the autumn budget, the same measure was introduced.
Yes, a 2p off, yeah,
and the polls tumbled anyway. It's all about, you know, reducing their unpopularity. But, you know, I'm all in favour of the NI.
I mean, there was we mentioned this yesterday. The Chancellor in 1947 called Hugh Dalton, who decided he was going to leak his budget. He had to resign in disgrace and he died a broken man. This whole thing was leaked in the last week and no one's even blinked. Does it not annoy you?
No, it doesn't annoy me at all.
You're more modern.
I think it's important, actually, that chancellors lay the groundwork before fiscal events like budgets. We, of course, saw what happened with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's awful mini-budget. The markets were spooked because of all of these measures, which no one knew about before. We all know what happened after that, and Liz Truss is now the shortest-serving Prime Minister in history, and Kwasi Kwarteng is stepping down from Parliament. So I think it is right that chancellors and Prime Ministers lay the groundwork with budgets ahead of the key announcement. Naturally, I will disagree with the lovely Yasmin over here. I think this was a good budget from a Conservative Chancellor in a very difficult economic picture.
She said it was quite clever, so you gave him more praise than I expected.
No,
the headline... I was just going to say, the big headline, and we'll go through some of it in a bit more detail, but the big headline was the change to national insurance, as Yasmin said, which the Chancellor said would save 27 million workers £450 a year on average, and families earning up to £80,000 will soon be able to claim child benefit in a little surprise extension. That was the one thing he managed not to leak. He branded the budget a budget for growth and said it would offer permanent tax cuts. Labour called the whole thing a con. I'll show you the papers, actually, because you're kind of split on this a bit. So if I'll come round the other side first, OK, because you start over here with the Express, because the Express is relentlessly optimistic about the government. So the Express says, Britain ready for takeoff. Okay, maybe you'll do or don't feel like that, you can tell us. The Mirror, the exact opposite, we deserve better. And here's the Mail, really, asking the question that we're asking today, so I've ended with this one. Will it be enough to see off Labour? And there's their Jeremy. It's not, that doesn't look to me like Jeremy Hunt, but never mind. Will it be enough to see off Labour is the question. Has he done enough? I want to ask you, actually, about the non-dom policy. So non-doms, wealthy people who live in this country, may have wealth abroad, certainly don't have jobs here, are seen as benefiting from Britain while not paying tax. Labour's policy is to tax them. Hunt says we can't do that. It would be wrong for this country. It would be a terrible policy.
And then he steals it.
And he's nicked it.
Yeah, he steals it.
There's
never forget the Prime Minister's wife was one of the beneficiaries for a long time.
Is it OK to steal Labour's policies?
Well, they steal each other's policies. And one of the most disappointing things, I have to say, I have a lot of criticisms of this budget, by the way. It, again, benefits those who have and doesn't help, really, those who don't.
Those who have jobs.
Those who have over £50,000. This is for people who are earning £50,000 to £80,000. You know, the fact that the household support fund for the poorest is only going to be extended 6 months is just catastrophic for some families.
Albie, what do you think of that?
It wasn't going to be extended at all.
Well,
Yasmin.
it should be, because these people have no option.
Yasmin. It is being extended. You don't think it's being extended for long enough. Who knows, maybe in 6 months' time they'll extend it further. I'd appreciate your argument if they were ending the household support fund.
But Rowntree,
but they're keeping it at the same level.
A spokeswoman from Rowntree, who they study poverty, deep poverty, long poverty in this country, totally reliable. She said this. She said, when you just extend for 6 months, it is impossible to plan, to really provide properly.
What about, hang on, I'm going to make the case here for the couple who both earn £49,000 and they're not getting child benefit, whereas somebody in a household where, sorry, they do get child benefit, somebody who owns £51,000 doesn't.
Well,
doesn't get as much. You think it's fine?
No, these are numbers that we can survive. You have a good life.
Right.
Okay.
Not in London. You couldn't survive in many parts of the country on a £50,000 salary.
Depends how much your debt is, I suppose.
With 3 children. And actually, Yasmin, tell that to the 500,000 families who are going to benefit from this policy. This is a Conservative policy which is going to be strengthening families. Which
no,
is
it's also, you're trying, it's a bribe. Everything in this budget is a bribe.
Okay. When our budget's not full of bribes.
Let's pause, because we will come back.
You asked me about this budget.
Okay.
Ask me about the next budget and I'll tell you.
Well, we don't know who's going to be delivering that. Pause, because we're going to get into the detail. I promise we'll come back to that. But the budget also allowed the government and Labour to trade barbs. I've got to confess, you know, when you watch these parliamentary moments, I quite enjoy seeing the sort of blade work.
Labour last night, Pat McFadden, who's their king, you know, king of policy, said he had nothing to criticise.
Right. Well, you know, but I mean, that's in a way their approach at the moment. In his speech, the Chancellor poked fun at Starmer's weight, referencing the fact that the Labour Lord Peter Mandelson there said that maybe Starmer should shed a few pounds to appeal to voters.
I know he's been taking advice from Lord Mandelson, who yesterday rather uncharitably said he needed to shed a few pounds. Ordinary families will shed more than a few pounds if that lot get in. If he wants to join me on my marathon training, he's most welcome as well.
Don't know if that's a good idea, that line of attack. Starmer got his own back later, though, taking aim at the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and even the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss.
A new entry in this hall of infamy, the Chancellor, who breezes into this chamber in a recession and tells the working people of this country that everything's on track. Yeah. Crisis? What crisis? Or, as the captain of the Titanic and the former Prime Minister herself might have said, iceberg, what iceberg? Yeah. Smiling as the ship goes down, the Chuckle Brothers of decline.
The Chuckle Brothers of decline.
I like that.
Ooh, will that stick, Albie? Bit too complicated?
I don't think it will stick. And I actually think Jeremy Hunt's comments about Keir Starmer being overweight after Lord Mandelson's intervention were perfectly reasonable. Let's not forget, when he poked fun at Boris Johnson for not running properly, accusing his running stunts as being a PR stunt, everyone was saying that was a perfectly reasonable line of attack because people like Yasmin didn't like Boris Johnson.
Everything about the Conservatives. Come on.
What's wrong with saying being fat is a bad thing?
I just think we need a grown-up parliament. We are in recession. Taxation levels are as higher than they've ever been since 1948. Why can't we just have both sides? No, but both sides behave like naughty schoolboys.
Well, in fairness, we did pull the best jokes out. We had to go wade. We had to wade through quite a lot. Let me tell you. After the break, let's talk more about the budget and ask these two, you know, whether it's the right budget for the Conservatives, whether it's the right budget for you. 0207 862 2222 is the number you need. Welcome back. We're live on Channel 5 with Yasmin and Albie. Later, we're asking if foxes should be culled. A Tory MP wants to cull all wild animals, including foxes, in the same way as badgers. It's that thing where they decide these are the policies that are going to win us the election. You know? OK, we're asking if the Conservatives got any hope after the Hunt budget. 0207 862 2222. Hey, listen, we've got this brilliant red box again. Look at that they brought, which says actually upside down. It says Chancellor of the Exchequer along the top. Doesn't matter that it's upside down, we don't mind that. I just didn't want to turn it the right way up because it will all fall apart and we'll see what's inside it. Let me show you. Each thing inside it is a measure announced by Jeremy Hunt himself. And we start with, look, this is the National Insurance Number Card. There we go, the National Insurance Card that we all have. So can I explain the National Insurance Policy? Because the panel touched on it a moment ago. Let's just have a look here. So essentially, it's an aggregate now. 2% off NICs this year, and last year, another 2 off. So put it together, and these are the savings. They really cut in about £15,000 of income at £48 savings. And if you go up to £50,000, you save £748.60. But by the way, the NICs stop being at that level after 50, so it doesn't affect people paid much more than that. £748.60 savings for people who earn the most on that board. That's national insurance. Right, next one needs a bit of explanation. Here we have a baby grow to represent child benefit changes. Now, back in the day when I was a kid, all parents got child benefit. Then they said, this is crazy, we can't give it to people who are wealthier. they started to claw it back. But the clawing back caused a problem because they stopped clawing it back at below 50,000. So above 50,000, if one person in the household earned more than that, you started to lose your child benefit. The problem was you could have two people in a house earning 49,000 and they were getting child benefit, whereas somebody in a house with, say, on 55,000 wasn't. Didn't seem fair. All they've done, there's still an unfairness here, but they've shifted it higher. So now it's above 60 that you lose 1% for every £200 you earn. And it's a benefit where you get £16.95 a week for each additional child, £12 or £25.60 a week for one child. Thank you to The Sun for their brilliant graphic there. OK, we'll whiz through the other stuff. Here we've got some alcohol and a pint. I'm going to actually been allowed to open this up. A pint, duty, frozen. And I must pour this, right? Whoa! Thank you, guys. So, yeah, would have risen 3% in August, but frozen until February 2025. Then I've got, weirdly, I saw this air freshener. I thought, what's that here? It must be, it's got to be sort of car related. And the answer is it is. 5p cut to fuel duty to continue for 12 months. Meaning £50 savings next year for the average driver. They've gone away from this idea of the fuel duty escalator where they were constantly putting the price up. You remember Rishi Sunak's wife was a non-dom. They're starting to look, here she is, they've started to look much more carefully at non-doms, rich people who don't have a job here, and looking at their worldwide wealth if they continue to live in the UK and they're going to be taxed on wealth abroad. And they think it'll raise £2.7 billion a year, unless all the non-doms say we're not playing ball and they leave. Vaping, there's going to be a duty on vaping. There is a vape. Oh, look, it's actually coming out. I've never vaped. I don't like the idea of this, but anyway, there we go. Plus a one-off increase in tobacco duty. 20 cigarettes could cost £16. And just one more for you. I've got a little bandage here in my Chancellor's box. Nearly £6 billion for the NHS, including £3.4 billion for outdated IT systems. So there we are. And the thing about it is normally it's a surprise that it wasn't because it had all been leaked except for the child benefit thing. Is it enough for him, Albie, to win, his party to win the election?
I think it is a good foundation which the Conservative Party will build upon before the next general election. There'll be many Conservatives that wanted the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to go further in terms of tax cuts. The tax burden is still at near historic highs because of the frozen income tax thresholds. But we know why that's happened. It's because of COVID. It's because of the energy price guarantee that the government supported families with throughout last winter. And he has still delivered tax cuts for working people, helping 50,000 families out with child benefit, extending alcohol and fuel duty. And it's all paid for by those with the broadest shoulders, non-doms, first-class flights, an extension of the windfall tax on oil and gas. This is a budget that people like Yasmin and One Nation Conservatives should be happy with because it is relieving taxes for working people and taxing those with the broadest shoulders, as well as delivering an increase in spending for the NHS and other public services.
There we are. Yasmin.
Albie, I will die before I take up the position that you want me to take because I know the tricks the Conservative Party is playing. For example, here we have in the budget the abolition of stamp duty relief for those buying more than one house. Throughout the country, there is a real outcry about people with second homes destroying neighbourhoods, localities, making it really hard for local people. These sinister sort of favouring of those with over £50,000 is not going to fool a lot of people.
Sinister.
It is sinister because it's on the one hand, like I said, I approve of the 2p, the NI change, but embedded in this is privileging the middle classes who have enough and actually punishing or ignoring the needs of the others.
Let's take some calls. Trevor in Lincolnshire, hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
How are you, Trevor? What do you think? Do you agree with Yasmin or Albie?
I agree with Yasmin. That gentleman that's on the panel has not got a clue what he's talking about. How can they justify a person on £15,000 a year, which is absolute peanuts, being £404 a year worse off? I've just seen it on another BBC.
Oh, this is what because of what they call fiscal drag, which is where people are going into a tax bracket that they weren't in because their pay's gone up.
Yes, and now £15,000 a year, £404 worse off. A person on £75,000 a year is only £8 a year worse off.
How do we justify that, Albie?
Trevor, what the government has done is cut taxes for 27 million working people paying national insurance. They cut it by 2% on January 6th, and they're cutting it by a further 2% now. So actually, the average household is going to be better off as a result of this government than worse off as a result of this government.
So what you're saying then is that programme that I've just been watching is a load of lies. So if that's correct, what they've done, how is a person on £15,000 a year going to be worse off by £404 a year?
Well, Trevor, I don't know if you've been watching this programme, but the graph that Jeremy just showed, Trevor, showed that someone on £15,000 a year would in fact be better off as a result of the national insurance cut.
It didn't show that, Albie. It didn't show that at all. Where did that table show that somebody on that low as a level of
annual
income?
savings?
Yeah.
15,000 where? Where does it show?
So the annual savings,
48 pounds.
Exactly. So they'd be better.
That's both 2% cuts. But I think Trevor's getting at something else, which is this weird thing called fiscal drag. But also, you've got to say, if you're living in Birmingham right now, your council tax has gone up 21%.
Well, we've not even started to talk about the areas where no money's going in. Local authorities.
Social care.
Social care.
That's social care.
Police. Prisons.
But
education, schools.
But don't you care about people who earn money keeping the money they earn?
I earn money. I don't want to keep all the money.
Why don't you want to keep the money you earn?
No, I want society to be better for everybody.
Yasmin,
is that so hard to understand?
Well, you spend a lot of tax and you told us it's going worse.
Yasmin, how can you say you support the 2% national insurance cut, but you want more money to spend on public services? Surely that position you would say, well, no, the national insurance cut was wrong.
I think there are loads of people who should be paying more tax. And as Trevor said, that people at the lower end are being punished and ignored yet again.
Punished?
But then
How
this
are
is
they
the Tory
being
party.
Trevor, thank you. And I'm glad he's doing a two-television lifestyle. Old Trevor, he's watching us and another channel. Yeah, brilliant. Glyn in Glasgow, hello.
Good morning, Jeremy. As far as I'm concerned, Jeremy Hunt was in his belt just staying at home yesterday with his slippers and a paper. He done nothing for any disabled person, and he just put sticking plasters over everything. Not one government is coming out, not one person's coming out just now and looking at the ripple effect. Like they've got an extra 20,000 police officers, but they've not got the courts to put the cases through.
Well, there's something bad. Yeah, you're right. There's something terrible going on with the police at the moment. You're right.
The stuff to the councils, the adult social service. You know, I worked for that in Glasgow, and they're taking that's all on the local government, but they're not giving local government money to pay for that. So what ends up happening is people don't stay in their own homes; they end up in hospital. And they end up costing NHS more money. The whole thing has got so many ripple effects, and nobody's actually wanting to get down to the core, drill into it and say, right, hold on, if we sort this, it will save us money.
Understood. Lynn, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether the Chancellor's got it right and given his party some hope with this budget. Or was it a damn squib? 0207 862 2222. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back. Yasmin and Albie with us later. We're asking if foxes should be culled. This is the latest suggestion by a Conservative MP. First, we're taking more of your calls on the budget. Has the Chancellor given his party some hope that they can win the election? Let's hear Mr. Hunt speaking. This is how he summed it all up.
We can now help families not just with temporary cost of living support, but with permanent cuts in taxation. We do this to give much needed help in challenging times. A plan to grow the economy versus no plan. A plan for better public services versus no plan. A plan to make work pay versus no plan. Growth up, jobs up, taxes down. I commend this statement to the House.
Jason in Somerset, is that going to make you vote for the Conservatives?
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, panel. Yes, I would say so. Personally, as someone who works over 50 hours a week, when you look at the £15,000 a year income, when they talk about that, if you look at the hours on minimum wage, someone would only be working about 27 hours a week, which is not a lot to work. If you're in a cost of living crisis and you're struggling, people need to work more.
So you're working, all the hours God sends, are you?
Generally, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, my mum passed away last year, so shortly I'll be able to work less due to my mum passing away, sadly. But, throughout my life I've worked long hours and, working does pay. We're slowly paying off our mortgage, me and my wife. We're bringing up 2 children. By working for a living, you do become better off. Yeah,
of course. However, if you're the opposition, what they say to you, Jason, is, wait, you've had now, 14 years of this lot. We've got the highest taxes for 70 years. The whole country seems to have gone off the edge of a cliff, and you want more?
Well, from that point of view, when you're paying out high amounts of money to pay people to stay at home, we had that throughout COVID. My wife and I were both key workers. I was working in care at the time. Yeah. It takes a while to catch up.
No, that's a fair comment.
That you've paid out for.
Yeah, COVID isn't mentioned when people criticise the Conservaties. You had 2 years where the economy was inert.
No, we were not the only country in the world to have COVID, and other, G7 and G8 countries have done far better than us. And the idea that these people just want free money, which is the implication, the amount, the really low wages some basic workers get, it should make your eyes bleed.
Well, it's partly
I've been
about
talking
rental,
to cleaners, dawn cleaners,
costs. Yeah.
right? And how do you expect them to survive even?
I know. Housing costs is a massive thing in this, and I don't know how the government deals with that. Thank you, Jason. Mary in East Sussex, hi.
Hi.
So you might have Blur's Drummers as your MP. How about that?
Thank you very much. No, what I wanted to clarify is what they're going to do about the state pension, because at the moment, what happens is that you pay your national insurance contributions, and then that guarantees you a state pension. But what the government are not saying is whether, if they abolish, as they now say they want to do, if they abolish the national insurance contributions, they're going to abolish the state pension too, or make it means tested, and if that's the case, then frankly, lots of people will earn money not by bothering to go out to employment. There are lots of other ways of getting money. You won't need to go into a job.
But we always know that thing about you pay national insurance to get your pension hasn't really been the case for years. It's just a massive Ponzi scheme, isn't it? I mean, in the end, they've made a promise that you're going to get a pension, and as long as they're making that promise, you're going to get it. It doesn't matter how the tax is collected.
But from the point of view, now I know it's not, it's not ring-fenced or anything, but the point is that is your contract. That if you go into employment for 35 years, you will get a state pension.
Sure, understood. So thank you, Mary. Very interesting. That if you clock up less national insurance contributions, there's a chance that somebody who's aged 30 now might be told when they're 65, I'm sorry, you've not got a pension.
We're going to be told that anyway, though, to be quite frank. There's not going to be a state pension.
But you're extremely young.
By the time I am claiming the state pension.
I'm
and I'd be in favour
that.
of tailoring it, actually, and it being means-tested. I appreciate it's not popular when I've spoken about it on this show, but it's too expensive and it needs to be done.
So your age, how old are you?
I'm 30, exactly,
You're 30,
as of January.
Albie, right. So you are thinking you may not get a pension for another 45 years?
Potentially longer.
I think 75?
I think the retirement age is going to go up. I support that. If we're living longer, we should be working longer.
Well, you're nodding away then.
I think if you're earning, if you've got a large private pension, why should you get a state pension?
Well, I mean,
I think
so many reasons.
Increasing the age, if you're fit, not if you're made, if you're not well and then you're made to work. But if you're fit, well, I haven't retired.
Any government that cancels the state pension loses the next election. Absolutely. There's no question. They're gone. You won't even see skid marks. Molly in Bedfordshire, hi.
Good morning.
So what do you think, Molly, about the budget?
Not a lot, not a lot. To me, there was nothing in there for pensioners. I have worked since I was 15, and I now get a widow's pension.
Yeah.
And this year, I had a tax bill for £700.
Yeah, because you're drifting into the bands where you are counted as someone who is earning, and it seems very unfair.
It definitely. Now I've got this letter, we've got this triple lock or whatever you call it, and I dread to think what I'll have to pay next year. Also, on my letter, I was told I'm 80 this year, and I'm going to get 25p a week extra.
OK, Molly, thank you very much indeed. It's true that the increases in the pension will mean people pay more tax on their pensions if they've got a bit of private pension as well. Jane is in Dumfries and Galloway. Hi.
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning, panel.
What do you think of the budget?
Worst budget I've seen in my lifetime. I'm 54 years old. I have been voting, obviously, since 18 years old. Worst budget I have seen in my lifetime.
What, but because the whole thing was leaked, or it was a damp squib, or what?
Damn squib.
Right, nothing in
it's for those. It's for those that have, and not for those that have not. I totally agree with Yasmin. I totally disagree with your male panellist,
Albie.
Albie.
Why do you disagree with me?
Because how can you say that £404 worse off for somebody on £15,000 a year or less is a good thing? And even if it does, even if we believe what the Tories Sun have said, and we're going to be £48 a year better off, that's not even...
Let Albie reply, Jane.
Look, Jane, the Chancellor has cut taxes for 27 million working people. I don't know how you can say this budget is the worst budget you've ever seen when it's increased funding for the NHS, cut taxes for working people, extended fuel duty and also alcohol duty. How can this be the worst budget in history when we have both lived through the Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng budget?
Well, that's a strange defence to run. I was not expecting that. Not as bad as a lettuce. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for all your calls on this. Fascinating. We'll talk a bit more about the budget tomorrow, probably. After the break, we're asking you...